And welcome back to the Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono, and as always, my co-host, partner in crime, Chris.
PIC, baby. I'm a PIC.
Today's episode, we're going to dive into some sleepers that we have that I think some names you've heard of, probably on some other forums and some other podcasts, some names you may not have heard of. And we'll also touch on a couple breakouts and bust candidates in our books. So let's jump into it. Before we get into the content, I should say, like, subscribe, hit that notification button so you can see all our new drops, all our shorts, and anything we post on a daily basis.
Help support us, guys. Help us grow our channel.
All right. Going in the first one, my first sleeper candidate, I've been high on this guy since he was a rookie. I actually drafted him when he was a rookie, hoping he was going to play, and then he ended up having cancer, and that's John Mechie. And
I can attest to this, that Jono actually rolled him up and was high on him.
Yes, I was high on him. Yeah. So I like this guy. I like the film. I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so I got to watch this guy a little bit more in watching SEC football. And he was playing when Jameson Williams was kind of overshadowing him a little bit. But when push came to shove, this receiver in Alabama, he was the rock for that offense in terms of wide receiver. He wasn't the biggest playmaker, but this guy ran all the routes. He was great after the catch. He was a great route runner, and he was always getting himself open, and he was a good safety valve. And I expect him to be the same thing for C.J. Stroud here in Houston, especially because this is almost like it's his rookie season. He never got to play his rookie season. Not that Jameson Williams got to play that much either, but that being said, he's not the Jameson Williams blow the top off the coverage type receiver. This is going to be a guy that's more like Devonta Smith was, more like Jalen Waddle was in a way. And I like the talent. I like the athleticism, and people are honestly going to forget about him. And I'm saying this with the caveat that he has to be healthy and ready to go for this to be a true sleeper pick. So by all means, keep up with his health status and the news and notes on him. But his name may start popping up a lot more than you see there, because outside of Nico Collins, that next position is up for grabs for wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in Robert Woods, and I think he's going to be a good placeholder to allow some of these younger receivers to emerge. Nico Collins is going to be the guy there. I think Tank Dell as well is going to be the guy there, and he's kind of one of my rookie breakout candidates. But I've been on this since C.J. Stroud got drafted. I think that there's a lot of talent in Houston. I think that they're moving in the right direction. I think C.J. Stroud is coming into of the rookie quarterbacks, he's coming into the best situation, because I think that there's not a lot of big names, but I think people are going to sleep on them because there's not a lot of big names. I think they have two very viable running backs. They bring in Dalton Schultz. They bring in Robert Woods. They have Tank Dell. They have John Mechie. They have Nico Collins. There's a lot of weapons here. And there's a lot of like under the radar kind of weapons. And they all bring different things to the table. Nico Collins is a big, tall, lanky receiver. Whereas, Tank Dell is 5'9" and just a speedster that can catch everything. Dalton Schultz is a great red zone guy. Like, they all bring a lot of things to the table. So I think that Mechie has a real chance to succeed here, because no one really knows who the number one is. He might be getting, he was drafted as a pretty high-end wide receiver, and then he just had, an unfortunate health issue.
Well, I would say he was drafted as a high-end wide receiver. I think he was actually, let me look it up. I think he was a late-round draft pick, but it was also because he had
second day or third day?
He was.
I thought he was second day.
I'll tell you right now. He was drafted in round 2 of the NFL draft, number 44 overall. So higher value, second day, not first round. But if you go back and you look at his draft profile, go back to watch the pre-draft profiles on him. If he did not injure his knee, because he injured it before Jameson Williams did in that game against Georgia in the championship game, John Mechie, his draft profile would have been much higher without that injury. And that is what they all kept saying. was going to be much higher, much higher. And yeah, they got Tank Dell. And they put a 3rd round pick on Tank Dell, but you put a 2nd round pick on a wide receiver out of Alabama, and we know what those guys can do. I mean, just look at the names on the list of Alabama receivers over the past 6 years.
Right.
I just think the cream's going to rise to the top here. I think he's going to find his groove. He's going to find his rhythm. And again, with the caveat that he's healthy, he's going to find himself a starting role in this team.
Yeah, I do. I personally like Tank Dell a little bit more than Mechie, but that's only because I think that CJ Stroud and Tank Dell are going to have that rapport just because CJ Stroud, basically told the Texans, draft this guy. I want this guy. So I think that there's going to be instant rapport there. And early in OTAs, Nico Collins has developed a really nice rapport with CJ Stroud. So I think between those guys, I actually think Robert Woods is kind of the least attractive receiver out of this group.
I agree.
So I do think that there's room for all 3 of them in, just a division that's not really that good, to be quite honest.
Well, and it's, I want to call it a rebuild year because, I mean, they did all the building they needed to this offseason, but it is more of like, let's see what we got in our guys on our future now. I mean, Tank Dell's a small little guy, and I know you like him, at 5'8", 165. Mechie is more of like probably your league average for wide receiver in terms of, not wide receiver, but wide receiver in terms of being 5'11", 185. He's got a little bit more beef to him. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of Waddle. I mean, Waddle's got that extra gear, but again, he was used the same way Waddle was used in Alabama.
Yeah. I just think that I by no means do I think Houston's a playoff team, but I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people with how young and talented this group is. Do I think that they're going to win 9-10 games? No, but I do think that they can have kind of the same season as like the Jets did last year, where they have a 7-win season where they weren't expected to win a lot of games or be in a lot of games, and they are. And again, this division is not that strong outside of Jacksonville. Tennessee is not as strong as and dominant as they were. Indianapolis is rebuilding too. So you have 2 rebuilding teams in this division. And I think that Houston's on a better trajectory than Indianapolis is.
Yeah. I mean, I think every year you have teams that surprise people in terms of victories. I think the Giants was one of them this past year. I don't think people thought they were going to win everything they did. And there's people who surprise people in losses too as well. And I think you look at someone like the Raiders last year and you look at someone like the Cardinals last year, and those are 2 teams that like completely flipped the script on what they were supposed to do as a team. So I do agree. I think Houston's going to surprise some people. Not us, I think, was we're expecting it, but they're going to surprise some people.
Not us.
Not us. And he's going at 184 overall. He's not being drafted, pretty much in the entire draft until the 15th round, pretty much 14th round. So you can find him, Mechie, late in this draft and take a flyer on him. He's a bench spot, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But to me, he's a guy that by the end of the season, he may be in your flex position in the playoff games for you.
Yeah.
Well, give me somebody on out of your sleeper basket that you like, that you can foresee being someone that may surprise some people a little bit more than they're thinking.
Well, this is a guy I've talked about a lot in a lot of our episodes. I've done short on him is Rashid Shaheed with the New Orleans Saints. I think that this guy is literally lightning in a bottle. Like it just seemed every time he touched the ball last year, he was scoring a long touchdown. It really was. And it didn't matter who was throwing the ball. So I think the way Derek Carr likes to throw the ball is he likes to shoot the ball downfield. He likes to really, chuck it. And I think it fits into what Shaheed is really good at, is getting open on the deep ball and scoring on big plays. And I think that having Olave, having a healthy Michael Thomas to kind of take coverage away and to be him, he's like the forgotten piece there. I think he can surprise a lot of people, and he's you can look up his ADP. I think he's going undrafted, or
he's going 167. He's in the bottom 3 rounds.
So this is a guy you can go really, really late and just take a flyer on, to where he might shock a lot of people, and be really valuable as a flex player. And he's not. I don't think he's going to throw up wide receiver 1 or 2 numbers, but as a flex play or as a as not just a bye week replacement, but a matchup based play. I think this is a great pick. If you're going to throw away a draft pick, why not throw it on a guy that literally every time he touches the ball, it's a touchdown?
Yeah, I mean, his stats last year, he had 4 for 41 and 2 touchdowns, week 16, 6 for 79 and a touchdown. Not 2 touchdowns. I'm reading the wrong category. He was 3 for 95 week 15 and a touchdown. He was 6 for 79 week 17. I mean, he doesn't need a lot of receptions to give you production. That's the beauty of a receiver like him.
Yeah.
So,
especially in
yeah,
standard,
one for week 7, 1 for 53 and a touchdown. I mean,
Yeah.
you get that out of your flex guy. That's 11 points, double digits. What do you need?
Yeah.
So, hold on. We lost Chris for 1 second. Let's see if we can get him back. Let's see if we can get him back. And he's back. He's back, gentlemen.
He's back.
Guess who's back? All right, let's continue on. I agree with the Rashid Shaheed. I actually like his stock a little bit more because, again, people are still going to hang their hats on Michael Thomas 2019. And it's 2023. Even if Michael Thomas is anything like he was in 2019, you can't say he's got the same step he had before. And he's
the world changed. That's pre-COVID.
He's got a whole new quarterback. He doesn't have Drew Brees throwing to him, and he's got Olave there. So, if you go 3 wide with Derek Carr and you get Shaheed there, I think he's gonna find a 1-on-1 matchup that he's gonna burn somebody, and it's gonna be open. And I think it's gonna be open week to week. It's not gonna be like every other week he's gonna get in the field and have an opportunity for a deep ball. I think they're gonna look to do that, especially if you have any sort of impending suspension to Alvin Kamara, that you're going to have to retool the offense a little bit differently. You're not going to have this jack of all trades Swiss Army knife in the backfield again.
Yeah, and while we're still talking about the Saints, why don't you go ahead with your second sleeper?
My second sleeper?
Yeah.
My second sleeper is not. I would say he's my third sleeper if I'm ranking him. But yeah, third sleeper, and that goes right into. If Alvin Kamara gets suspended, I think a sleeper pick, everybody's going to be like, oh, it's Jamal Williams season again. He's going to have all this yardage and touchdowns. I don't think that's going to be the case. Jamal Williams is a good running back, but he's never been a complete, full 3-down running back for a full season. I think Kendra Miller is a guy that you are going to want to grab, and I would grab him even if, say, the court hearings for Kamara aren't done at the start of the season and it's going to be figured out maybe, in early October. Get him and let Kamara face a suspension for the second half of the season and maybe into the next season or whatever it be, because now you got yourself a good running back in an offense that, again, I talked about this offense. I don't want to touch this offense because there's just too many people to feed. Derek Carr doesn't excite me whatsoever. But again, as a sleeper pick, I think a sleeper pick would be Kendra Miller because he's going to have to produce for this offense if there's no Alvin Kamara. Jamal Williams is just not going to get it done the way he did last year. And he only got to do that on the short yardage stuff. And I think they're going to need somebody out the backfield a little bit more and a nice young spark in the backfield. And that's going to be Kendra Miller. So that's I would say my third sleeper on my list that I'm going for him purely because of opportunity. But again, I heed the warning of the Saints offense. Heed the warning of the Saints offense.
We might know a little bit more. I think the court hearing for Kamara is set for the end of July. So I do think
it keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed. So that's the only thing to worry about.
It does, but I think we're gonna get by the start of the season. We'll have a better understanding of kind of what's going on. But yeah, no, I like the pick there because I think if Kamara's there, I still like Jamal Williams. If Kamara's not there, I still like Jamal Williams. But I kind of like the other guy that's going to be there too. So whether it's Miller or whether it's Kamara, I like either one. But Miller, especially, you can get late in drafts because everyone's going to overdraft Jamal Williams, and you're going to be able to get Miller in round 12 plus.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at Jamal Williams, and last year was the first year he ran for 1,000 yards. He had 262 carries, and that's purely because DeAndre Swift was injured so much last season, and it was supposed to be DeAndre Swift's backfield. But before that, he had not topped 153 carries.
Right.
And he barely crossed 4 yards per carry last year. The 17 touchdowns obviously all came on goal line work. I mean, you look at how many of them were 3 yards or less. But he only had 12 receptions. And you go to a team where you look at how Josh Jacobs did last year out the backfield for the Raiders, and you look at running backs out the backfield for the Saints in the history. Like, if you're going to find a Kamara replacement, a guy that's going to catch the ball at the backfield, be a good flex option for you, maybe even a running back 2 option if he solidifies himself more without Kamara, that could be Kendra Miller.
Right.
So I just don't see the Saints wanting to give Jamal Williams the ball 262 times again. Like the
yeah, probably not.
So, especially because, I mean, this is going to be his 7th year in the league versus a rookie.
Yeah.
Fresh legs. I mean, anyway, moving on. Who would be your second sleeper pick here?
So this is a guy early on I kind of talked about in our very first episode with New Holmes, and this was a guy that instantly, when he got signed on the new team, I was like, I'm going to draft him in the 15th round as my last
This is the
pick.
Ultimate sleeper, ladies and gentlemen, by the way.
The ultimate sleeper pick. And I love guys like this that are just like, they're so talented. And they just end up in a great position where like there's no one else there. So this Trent Sherfield in Buffalo, and Gabe Davis has just been so subpar compared to what Diggs is doing on the other side. And they're desperate for a number 2 receiver there.
Yeah.
And I don't think Sherfield is going to be like wide receiver 2, but this is a guy that no one's even going to touch. No one's going to touch him there.
No, he's ADP 360 something.
Yeah. I mean,
which is funny because, and that's overall, but just funny because he still was wide receiver 8 or 4. He's still within the top 100 receivers in the NFL, and he was on Miami last year.
Yeah.
Where he was just kind of just shoved to the side.
Yeah. I mean, he's playing behind 2 great, like he's not going to get any playing time there. He's behind 2 great receivers. So going to a team where they want production out of that wide receiver 2 position, or at least a wide receiver 3 position.
They receiver 3 because McKenzie was not unreliable. He couldn't be healthy last year.
Right. They're just desperate for another pass catcher there.
Yeah.
So they go and get Dalton Kincaid, and I think people think that Kincaid and Knox are going to just all of a sudden be the 1,000-yard receiving tight ends, and they're, mark my words, they're not. But I think Sherfield is a guy that, like, again, you can pick him up off the waiver wire in week 1. You guys can wait and see to see what if he ends up being valuable. But this is also a guy you can go and draft before everyone in the 15th round as your last pick, and have on your team, and then you have him solidified the entire season. This is, again, a deep sleeper where this is a guy that I'd be willing to throw a dart blindly and know that I'm gonna hit the board somewhere with this guy, because I think he is going to produce there. Like I said, that there's a need for it in a team that loves to throw the ball and loves to throw the ball deep. Now this is also, if D-Hop goes there, throw this pick out the window.
Yeah.
But if D-Hop doesn't go to Buffalo, I think there's a door open that has just this massive hole in it on they need production out of a number 2 receiver. And if Diggs can't do everything. And I think Diggs last year started getting frustrated because he was doing everything. And he's getting double covered, and Gabe Davis was not producing, and Isaiah McKenzie was not producing, and Cole, whoever else that they had there.
Well, I'd say Gabe Davis wasn't producing what they expected based on the end of his 2021 campaign.
Right, and everyone thought that he was going to come in there and be this great number 2 receiver, and he was drafted in the third and fourth rounds last year, and just didn't have those kind of numbers at the end of the season because he was just so wildly inconsistent. And
I mean, he played 16 games, so he missed a game. He had 48 receptions only on 93 targets. Like, catch more balls, buddy. But he still had a 17 yards per catch. Sherfield that can do the same thing. Gabe Davis had 7 touchdowns last year, which helped put him as wide receiver 24. That's the only thing that kept him wide receiver 24.
Yeah,
So
and Sherfield's numbers are not going to jump off the books at you. I think he only had 2 or 3 touchdowns last season, only about 240 yards or 300 yards receiving last year. But he was again
but
not getting any.
go look at the video. Go look
Yeah,
at his plays. Go look at the
go
highlight of
watch
last year.
those plays where he made them,
Yeah.
and he's a great receiver that can get open against top coverage too. Like a lot of those plays were against the Jets or the Patriots, and he's making plays in those games, especially when you have guys on the outside that are getting covered and locked up. Like he's a guy at least at the number 3 wide receiver position that can produce. So again, this is a guy that's not going to get drafted, and if you guys want to wait and see, I would be willing to bet $1 or $2, based on the return that I would get, that he's going to end up producing in the first 3 weeks of the season and have a very good season with Buffalo. So
now here's the thing that a little food for thought. So 66 targets for McKenzie last year. So that's 66 targets up for grab. Gabe Davis had 93 last year. You shave off a couple of Gabe Davises and you hand it his way. I mean, even if he took the 66 targets to himself from McKenzie over the course of the season, that's a solid flex player for you in a bench spot to take a flyer on. And the fact that he had a better yards after the catch than McKenzie did last year, and I could think he could find the end zone better because he's a bigger body. The one thing that he has going for him too is because he's similar size to Gabe Davis, he can find himself on the field for blocking opportunities too, which gets you more opportunities down the road.
Right.
And playing time. So I like it. It is a deep dive in a sleeper, and it's a deep sleeper. But again, that's what we're here for, is like, let's pick apart some names that we like that may end up finding and being, I'm not necessarily a league winner, but a guy on your bench that you have confidence throwing into your flex during a bye week or during an injury, rather than having to every week scavenge the waiver wire to try and get somebody else.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll give my last one here. And this guy is not somebody new to football. This guy is back into the team he was before, and I love it for him, especially because of the situation he lands himself in. That's Marvin Jones. He's back in Detroit after 2 seasons in Jacksonville, and I would say one subpar season last year in Jacksonville. His first season in Jacksonville, he's decent, 73 for 832 and 4 touchdowns. But his last 2 seasons in Detroit, when he had Kenny Golladay as the wide receiver 1 there, he flourished as the wide receiver 2. And he did it both in 13 games and 16 games, and he even did it back in 2017 as well with 1,000 yards. But he had 9 touchdowns all 3 of those seasons. I'm going to count out 2018 because of an injury. He only played 9 games. But those 3 seasons of 2017, 19, and 20 as the wide receiver 2 on his team, he had 9 touchdowns and anywhere from 780 to 1,100 yards. He's got great yards after the catch too. He finds himself in open space very often. He's a veteran receiver, been in the league since 2012. So he's going to be able to help that young receiving room, because you lost DJ Chark, who was another guy who he's taken the targets from here. And you have Jamison Williams suspended for 6 games. Somebody else has to catch the ball in Detroit. And if there's success early with Marvin Jones and they're winning ball games with Marvin Jones, don't think just because Jamison Williams comes in that this guy's going to, bite the dust. I think Jamison Williams is a different receiver. James Williams is a pure speed, big play receiver, and Marvin Jones is going to be that possession guy that's going to be open because everybody's going to want to cover Amon-Ra St. Brown. He to me is Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Amon-Ra is him back in the early 2010s when he came into this league. They're very similar receivers.
Yeah, I like it. I think that I'm right on board with you. I think his production is going to be there. He's not coming in as a number 1. I think with the vacancy from Jamison Williams, especially in the first 6 games of the season. I mean, you think about it, Jamison Williams missed training camp last year because of an injury. He's going to miss training camp this year because of a suspension. And he's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the game and the season because of a suspension. And you just can't assume that he's going to come after 6 weeks and just take over a number 2 role.
No, Jameson
So
Williams had 9 targets and he caught 1 ball for 41 yards and a touchdown. And that 1 ball excited everybody.
right.
I mean, people, let's be honest with yourselves here. He caught 1 pass last year.
And the offense there, they are looking for guys that can make plays. They're looking for guys opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown that are going to be pass catchers. A lot of reports about Sam Laporta, but I don't love the tight end position from Detroit. But there's not a lot of other guys there. They had to cut 2 of their other receivers they because of the gambling issues. So Cephas is gone, and the rest of the wide receiver room is not that stacked. So it's a perfect opportunity for a veteran like Marvin Jones, who kind of knows the style that they want to go in, who wants to be part of the rebuilding and push them in the right direction. Like, this offense can sustain multiple guys like this. And Marvin Jones is a perfect fit too. Like, he's a great route runner. He's going to get open. He's more of a possession receiver. He's not going to break a lot of, his yak's not going to be very high, but they're not going to require him to do that. And this is a guy that you can go and get in the 12th round. He's very, very late in the draft.
Yeah, but he's also I will say he's a career yak of, on average, over 12. Look, just a quick shot at the dart numbers. I mean, we're talking 11, 11, 12, 12, 14, 18, 16, 12, 12. I mean, career number yak is solid. His yards per target are low. They're all under 10 except for 1 season. And once he left Cincinnati after, his rookie campaign with Cincinnati, once he got to Detroit in 2016, it just that's his home. That's where he made his bread and butter. That's where he made his money, which got him to a contract with Jacksonville. So I just like it.
Great narrative too. You return home to really bring them to the playoffs and make a push. Think of that. He's part of the contributing reason that they get back to the playoff contention with this team and maybe make a run. Like
he's on the depth chart listed as their wide receiver 3, going Amon-Ra, Jameson, Marvin Jones, which is funny. But again, we know Jameson's a different type of receiver. Jameson Williams, people, is not going to be the guy that's on the field as the wide receiver 2 every play. If they have 2 wide receiver sets, I guarantee you we're going to see Marvin Jones over Williams, just because that Jameson Williams, I don't want to call him a one-trick pony.
Last year with DJ
He's just a different type of receiver. Get the veteran out there. This is probably ending towards the end of career for Marvin Jones, just because he's been in the league since 2012. I mean, this is going on his 11th season. That being said, I just think, to me, this is a guy that's going to carry the locker room. Like, he's a good locker room guy, but he's going to help carry this offense, and that way it's not going to be on Amon-Ra St. Brown's shoulders. And this team is a team ready to win right now. Like, they want to win. And I know you said you don't like the tight ends there. I do like the tight ends there, just because I know how Jared Goff likes his tight ends. He liked them at the Rams, and he likes them here. I mean, don't forget Gerald Everett when he was with the Rams, had some great games. Last year, Brock Wright, as soon as Hawkinson left, Brock Wright had some big games for them too as well. And Sam Laporta is a great pass-catching receiving tight end too. But I just want to say, like, Marvin Jones isn't going to be a guy that you're plugging in yourself every week unless he surprises me. But I'm on the Marvin Jones train. I think this is a guy that if you fill your bench with him, you're going to be happy with his production to be able to plug him into your flex. And he may outplay your flex or your wide receiver 3 on your team just because of opportunity.
We talk about, just guys, the offenses that we like and wanting a piece of it. And this is an offense that we both like. We both think that they're going to be a higher scoring offense. And so why would you not want to take a fly? Like, if you're going to take a flyer on anyone, take a flyer on an offense that you like. Yeah. Because, if they turn up, like, if they're going to be top 7 in the league in scoring, why would you not want a piece of that rather than a bottom feeder, like being like Washington's, Curtis Samuel or a backup there, or have any one of a piece of the sub 5'10" receivers that are in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's like midgets throwing to midgets. We're literally watching
little people. I think we call them little people.
Sorry. Well, it's midget league, Pop Warner.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Because, they're all, Kyler Murray, 5'10", throwing to Greg Dortch, Rondell Moore, and Marquise Brown, all under 5'10".
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, it's a perfect point.
I'd be the
It's like,
tallest receiver on that team.
these are the guys that why not put yourself in a position to succeed with an offense that you like. Give me your last sleeper before we each give ourselves a breakout candidate and a bust candidate.
Yeah, so this guy has been going around the horn. I do think that he's a guy that I want to keep my eye on. And again, I don't love this offense, but I think Tyquan Thornton with the Patriots is going to be a sleeper guy that you can grab. He's going to go probably undrafted or really late in the draft. I think he's right now on the third on the depth chart behind Devontae Parker and Juju. But this is another team that this offense is a lot of unknown because of what they were last year. But they didn't really have an offensive coordinator last year, and the offense just stunk, to be quite honest. And 2 years ago, they had a lot more production. You saw Jacoby Myers step in, Kendrick Bourne step in. Both those guys are gone. So they brought in Juju, and Tyquan was a rookie last year, and they were really high on him. They loved him towards the later end of the season. We saw him increase in production. Now, his numbers from last season aren't going to jump off the board. He only had 2 touchdowns, and again, under 400 yards or under 300 yards. Nothing.
Yeah, under 250, but still,
under
he only had
250,
22 receptions.
Nothing spectacular, but this guy can play and he's fast, and so they were going to look to get him the ball, especially on the outside and in space and those screen passes. And this offense is going to be a lot different than what we saw last year. So I do think that they're desperate for playmakers there. And I think that having 2 really good pass catching tight ends with Gesicki and Hunter Henry is going to open up some things for some of the smaller receivers. I think it hurts Juju having those guys, but I think it helps Tyquan Thornton. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tyquan Thornton ended up taking a lot of the role from Devontae Parker.
I think Devontae Parker has seen his heyday. Yeah, I'm not impressed by him.
He's been injured a lot. And he's good when he's in there, but he's been injured quite a bit the last couple of seasons. And when he misses time, there's really nobody else out there after Tyquan Thornton. There's really not a lot of other people. There's Boutte that they drafted this year, but
who I think could be a sleeper pick in his own. It just depends on if he is making a splash. We already know Thornton's making a splash right now.
Right.
In camp because they're talking about it, but it sounds like he's making a splash with some nice design trickery and using his speed and stuff like that, because Bill O'Brien does have tricks up his sleeve. Boutte is a different type of receiver. He's a big dude and he's a good route runner. He's somebody that I think can rival Devontae Parker more than Boutte finding himself a position on this team. More than Thornton finding a position on his team for him to be a different type of receiver, and
right.
He's going to have the most speed in that receiver room.
Right. So yeah, I'm not super high on him just because I don't really know what this offense is going to be. It's not that I don't love this offense, but we don't really know. We can assume it's going to look like it was 2 years ago, but even so, is that really a pass friendly offense that you want a piece of the wide receiver room? But I think Tyquan Thornton is an interesting player that. He's going to go. You can get him in the 14th or 15th round. You can get him really, really
definitely
late.
Get him in the 15th round. Any of those wide receiver 3s on the Patriots, 15th round.
Yeah.
But
so they're
again,
going to go mostly undrafted.
And the one note I want to make about this is why would you want anybody else on the Patriots besides Ramondre Stevenson? Well, here's food for thought, people. They're in a division that they're going to be chasing points all season. You've got to play the Jets twice. You got to play Miami twice. You got to play Buffalo twice. You're going to have to score points through the air. You can't just try and run the ball all the time with Ramondre Stevenson. So somebody's going to have to step up. And Juju quietly did, just under 1,000 yards, I think, last year with Kansas City. But again, he was on Kansas City's team. And we're talking about a receiver on Kansas City that he couldn't get 1,000 yards there. Am I right by that? I think he had under 1,000 yards.
I think he had 900.
Yeah, 900 something. He was close to it, but yeah, 930. And, on 100 targets. Come on, dude. So I just think Juju's going to disappoint you, and I think Parker's going to disappoint you. I think these young bucks are going to have to step up and get the youth. And let's just also put it out there that Thornton is already showing up at OTAs, and Kayshon Boutte was, if he had not gone back for another year at LSU, was going to be that wide receiver one off the board.
So let me say this too, and you brought up a solid point that because of the division that they're in, they're going to be chasing points. Well, because of the division that they're in too, the third wide receiver is probably going to be the best wide receiver on that team when they're
Yeah,
playing against the Jets and the Miami Dolphins.
definitely gets
Because
the Jets.
well, I mean the Dolphins too with Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. I mean like
Yeah,
Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, like they both those teams have corner one, corner two coverage. So you can expect those guys. If Parker's the number two, he's going to be locked up.
yeah,
So the nickel corner is going to get Thornton, and I can expect Thornton to beat a lot of nickel corners, especially on those two teams. So he might be the best receiving option during those 4 games of the season.
yeah.
I mean, and Buffalo is not a slouch either at corner. So
All right, well let's finish this up with a couple quick breakouts and bust candidates from each one of us before we close out this week's episode. I'll go first here with my breakouts, and let me know your thoughts on them real quick. We don't have to dive too deep, but I've got Romeo Doubs. I think this guy is going to come in and build on his rookie season. And from the reports already, he's already having a good rapport with Jordan Love. Jordan Love said, if you're in trouble, it doesn't matter. You could throw the ball up and he's there and he's got separation. He makes the catch. And we saw that as a rookie, before Christian Watson went on his tear, he was the guy there when Alan Lazard was hurt and other people were hurt. So I like him there. It's going to be a different offense there, so not sure what it's going to be like. But again, I think he's a breakout candidate. And then I've got a running back breakout candidate, and that's Cam Akers. I think now the Rams have done nothing to add to the backfield too much, and I think he's going to find himself as the RB1 there. And even if they split carries with somebody else, he's the veteran there. They're going to run him. They're going to use him. And he was successful. When healthy, he's successful. And he's now coming off a whole full season later, fresh off that Achilles injury, that I don't see him. I don't see him having a bad season. I think you're going to get him late. If this is another great candidate for 0 RB, because right now Akers is going at ADP 65. So
yeah,
you're going
fairly late.
You're going 0 RB and you're going to load up on wide receivers, quarterback, tight end. You get someone Cam Akers as your RB2 or even RB1. Like you roll Connor and Akers right there with those two running backs in a 0 RB situation. You're going to be happy, and I think he's going to outplay his ADP.
Yeah, you'll be just fine drafting those two guys. Now I like those two breakouts. My breakouts would be Elijah Moore with the Cleveland Browns. I think he's in the best quarterback position that he's been in his career. I think he has Amari Cooper on the other side, so he doesn't need to come in and be the guy. He's been impressing a lot of people in the OTAs already. I think Deshaun Watson, like we've talked about, if he returns to 80% of what he was, he can sustain 2-3 receivers in that offense. And Peoples-Jones is a big body. Amari Cooper is going to get top coverage, and Elijah Moore is probably going to be forgotten about early in the season. And that's a guy I would look to. I would love to have in the middle of my draft to go and grab, because I think he's going to have not a wide receiver one season, but I think he's going to have a breakout role where you could see him jump into the wide receiver top 20.
Yeah.
The other guy that I really like, that I was kind of, between those two guys, I was like, I like Elijah Moore better. But the other guy I like is Rashad Bateman. I think if he stays healthy, that opposite OBJ, there's a lot of pass catching room for him. I think he's really talented. I think Zay Flowers is not going to overtake him for a wide receiver 1 or 2 role. I think Zay Flowers is going to stay in that wide receiver 3 role. They didn't commit a ton to OBJ. So if OBJ doesn't come back to what he was, like, they can move to Zay Flowers if Zay Flowers takes that role. But I think Bateman might emerge as the number 1 in that offense. And they've been desperate to have a wide receiver be productive with Lamar Jackson. And maybe this is the year Lamar Jackson really is able to sustain someone, outside of the 1 year with Marquise Brown, that he can sustain someone. And Bateman has just been waiting to break out for a couple of years now. And I think he just has had trouble staying healthy. But if he stays healthy, I think he's in the best position of his young career to really emerge as a breakout.
Yeah, he missed the beginning of his rookie campaign. He missed the first 5 weeks, and then he missed a total of 11 games last year. But it sounds like he's right on schedule for his rehab, according to John Harbaugh, and he's chomping at the bit. So, again, I think Odell Beckham is on the tail end of his career. I think he's going to get his. I think he's going to be more of a situational receiver, too. He's not going to be able to sustain a wide receiver one role on a team, in my opinion. And I think when you talk about Zay Flowers, that guy is good, but he is a different type of receiver. So being the outside guy, Rashad Bateman's got an opportunity. He's going to sieve some targets, but I do like that. I think he's got opportunity to succeed, staying healthy. All right, real quick, 2 bust candidates from each of us. One, I said it last week in our episode when we were talking about wide receiver twos, that I like the value of the wide receiver one on their same team, and that was Ayuk that I like better, and that was in reference to Deebo Samuel, and I have Deebo Samuel as my bust candidate this year. I think last year showed you that once you got someone like Christian McCaffrey in the fold, and they didn't have to rely on Deebo Samuel in the rushing game and the trickery and moving him all over the field like they did the year before, it made him very one-dimensional. And not that he's not that. I mean, I think he's a good receiver, but I think the way they use him in San Francisco and the offense does no longer lead to him having all that explosive playmaking ability, because his yards per target was under 7 yards per target. It was like low 6s. You're not going to get much offense out of that, and unless your yak ends up being like 18 yards, like it was for or 17 yards, like it was for AJ Brown. You're not going to get the production that you're looking for out of a wide receiver one there. So that's my bust candidate this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. We talked about it last week, where this is a guy that I valued Ayuk over, and this was a guy that I think his role is diminishing in this offense, and we've seen his production go down over the last season, and I think it's going to continue to go down this season. Because they brought in other players that can do what he does and better than what he does. So, my bust candidate this year is Mike Evans, and put some yellow tape on this. Red tape, yellow tape. It's a caution. Okay.
Caution tape.
It's not a stay out zone. But he is my bust candidate because I think we've grown accustomed in Mike Evans' career to seeing end of season numbers being 1,000 yards at least, and 8 touchdowns at least. And I just think Baker Mayfield is or Kyle Trask, neither one of them is very talented at throwing the deep ball, and that's what Mike Evans relies on for a lot of his production. And Mike Evans is not a bad receiver. I still think he's going to get production. I still think he's going to be involved in this offense, but a lot of the big plays, a lot of the massive production games, we've seen Mike Evans have 30-point weeks and then follow it up with a 5-point dud. And the reason he had those 30-point weeks is because he'd have 2 long touchdowns. And, they're not going to get that with Baker. Baker cannot sustain deep ball receivers. I can't be more clear about that. Like, he's not all of a sudden going to become this guy that, like, he's now Tom Brady and just going to chuck the ball deep. No, this is not his game. Like, he's going to be a game manager, if that. And I expect Godwin and I expect tight ends and even Russell Gage to be more involved in the passing game. I think this offense is going to turn to Rashad White a little bit more and the run game. I just don't see them running seam routes up the side and chucking the ball to Mike Evans, who's going to make a play on it. Like, no. Evans has had the luxury of having 2 of the best deep ball throwers. I want to say Jameson Winston is one of the best, but he was very good at throwing the deep ball.
Yeah, he was. He did it. And he also had, don't forget, he also had Fitzmagic too, who's great at throwing the deep ball. And Tom Brady is very accurate at throwing the deep ball.
Right. So he's had guys that are very, like, his production has gone really well with the quarterbacks ability to throw the deep ball. And Baker's just not that. And Baker was never that. Baker's not going to all of a sudden become that because it's not like Byron Leftwich is this like offensive guru too that's going to be like, no, let me show you how to throw the ball deep. No, sorry, Baker. Like, I think you might be a great guy, but you're not going to throw the ball deep, and
yeah, I mean,
you're not going to be successful at it.
Evans had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. It's his lowest touchdown mark since 2017 in Tampa, and that year he had 1 yard over 1,000 on 71 catches, and he had a low yards per target. Again, his yards per target went up after that season, so did his production, but then his yards per target dipped down again a whole yard almost last year. And I mean, I agree. I said, like, I think Baker Mayfield is not the guy that you got to be excited about throwing him the ball. I mean, his accuracy is not great. His completion percentage is not great. And it showed last year. I mean, in Baker's in Baker's best season, he threw for 3,800 yards. I think that was the first season with Odell and Landry together. And he still only threw for 22 touchdowns, and he didn't even throw for 4,000 yards. He threw 534 times that season. That if you can't throw for 4,000 yards and throwing the ball 500 times, or, almost 550 times, just goes to show that you don't have a downfield threat in the arm. And he had downfield threat receivers, and he only completed the ball 317 times. So I'm not a Baker believer. I'm not a believer. I love him as his attitude and his gamer, but I agree. I think it's a good bust candidate in Mike Evans. This may be his first season under 1,000.
If there's a prop bet on any betting site that has Mike Evans under 1,000 yards and it pays out pretty decent, place a bet on it.
You heard it here. Place that prop bet.
I expect some return.
Yeah, a follow, a like, a sub.
Brought to you by DraftKings. Brought to you by FanDuel.
Thanks for tuning in today, guys. And continue to tune in. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about our draft strategies and different strategies and what our thoughts are on it and kind of how to navigate the draft as it comes to you. And so tune in next week for that detail. And the week after that, I think our plan is to have a nice big mock draft with a couple guys from the league and really see how things are shaking up in ADP and take the tools to it. So subscribe, hit that notification button, get all those notifications. You'll know exactly when we drop our new stuff. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.